Yesterday,
make 1, 2, 3, 4 necklaces.
They do. That's where I got my 555 necklace.
I know they make number ones, but 1, 2, 3, 4 is not as common as like 2, 2, 2, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4, 4.
No, you can order it like that. They can make it. But I saw 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, and 5, 5, 5 yesterday, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was like, my angels.
I see 1, 2, 3, 4 at least once a day.
I see 5, 5, 5 constantly. I think I see it now because I'm so like, when you think about something, you're always gonna like, I want a yellow car, and then all you see is yellow cars.
How many Jeeps can you find? Oh, they're everywhere.
Oh God.
Fucking Jeep.
And they fucking haunt me in my dreams. But for a better reason. Anyways. So, speaking of ADHD.
Yeah.
Today.
Guess what? I forgot what episode this is. That never happens to me.
I'm lost. I have no idea.
64.
Yeah, bitch, we are way into June.
This will air the second week of June.
64. Yeah. Okay. What? 64.
Speaking of, today
we're going to talk about ADHD. Good old fashioned ADHD. So ADHD, a lot of people okay, words. This is not scripted. I had asked for input on a status a while ago. And so we're just kind of batching these episodes where people were asking about certain things. And so somebody had asked about adult ADHD. Let's clear this up. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's no diagnoses that is adult ADHD. Okay.
Like I don't have adult depression. I just have depression.
It's just
ADHD.
It's a catch-all for all ages.
Yep.
If you have ADHD, you could be 6 or you could be 96. Like It just is what it is. Mm-hmm. I think at 96 though, you probably just don't give a fuck.
No.
So I'm so distracted right now because my watch is buzzing, my phone is buzzing. Okay. So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I don't know exactly what year they took away ADD and
DSM-5. They removed ADD.
Okay, so DSM-5 they have. So in the DSM-4 there was ADD and then ADHD, and then they combined them together to remove ADD, which was attention deficit disorder. So they just combined it, and then now you have to put specifiers on when you are diagnosing someone. 3. So it's the combined type, the
inattentive type, and the hyper type.
Or the hyperactivity. So there's one where it's just really hard for you to pay attention and focus. The other one, you have a lot of extra energy. And then the combined presentation is you have both. So I have ADHD combined. Makes 100% sense in my mind. So what I did for a little bit of research, I just completed a 30-hour training. So now I am an ADHD CCSP, which is a certified clinical services provider for ADHD. I got to put do not disturb on, dude. People are just fucking wilding out right now.
That's because they know you're talking about ADHD and they want this episode to be genuine and they want to fuck you up.
Bro, right, and I did not even take my pills today because I was like, you know what? It's the weekend. You're supposed to take medication holidays. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, it's the weekend. You really don't have anything that you need to focus on besides recording. And Steph is enticing to you. So you like to focus on Steph. So it's not like you'll be bored. And now I'm just like, my focus, I can't do much.
Squirrel glitter.
Okay. I don't even know why this is open in front of me anyways. So I completed a training, right? So I can be somebody who helps, or it can be like an ADHD coach, or it can be somebody who helps people move through their ADHD or their symptoms from it. So through that training, a lot of it was focused on kids and how to address them in the classroom, medications, and I will say that I think it is, I don't want to say way harder because I feel like that's being dramatic, but there's a lot more challenges in coaching a child or somebody under the age of 18 versus coaching an adult, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no insight when you're a kid.
Yeah. Well, and they also have such freedom and access to go and try out the things that they need to try out to maybe make their life easier for them versus a kid. I'm relying on the parents to go do these things. And it's too much. Well, it's not too much, but it's more challenging, I will say,
Yeah.
when working with kids. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Sorry, I was choking. A neurodevelopmental disorder. So this is the most researched mental health disorder, most studied. I think a lot of times a lot of kids have been misdiagnosed. A lot of kids who've experienced trauma, I think, have been misdiagnosed as ADHD, which is why Steph and I all the time are talking about like symptomology does not equate to that exact diagnosis.
Yep.
There are so many things that go into diagnosing you that it's not just you meeting this criteria, because again, trauma, depression, anxiety, ADHD,
there's a fuck ton of overlap.
They can all overlap, right? So that's something that needs to be important. So it's the most researched. And what people don't understand too, right? I think ADHD gets this bad rap of like, oh, it's just you can't pay attention. Oh, you have ants.
You're just hyper.
You're just hyper. Like, no, it's not that we're hyper. It's the way that we produce and metabolize neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine that we don't have enough of them, and they just go away. And so it's hard. So it's a lot of people are thinking like, oh, you're just hyper, or, oh, it's because you have too much sugar and blah, blah, blah.
You're just flaky.
There's actual differences in the areas of the brain that light up. It's easier to tell and see in children when they do brain scans versus adults. Not that you can't see it in adults, but it's easier for kids, right? Because everything's firing. So a lot of people like, oh, it's sugar, it's too much screen time. Like, my favorite thing when I was listening to the TED Talk of the one girl who has resources that we'll talk about later on when we talk about like, hey, how do you fucking handle this? Correlation does not equal causation. So just because some people have sugar and they get a little bit hyper, case in point me, doesn't automatically equate to them having ADHD. It definitely can mimic it, right? Like, but I can be hyperactive when having just glasses of water. So like it doesn't, that just because somebody
can exacerbate things, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just because somebody can, be focused on the screen for 6 hours doesn't mean that they don't have ADHD. Well, you're paying attention. Yeah. Yes. I want to play the game. I don't want to learn about math. I could give a fuck about math. I want to, race Mario Karts with my friends. Like, what the fuck? Like, the same way you can watch the fucking Packers all day long on Sunday, but you can't get a report turned in. Okay. Anyways, so on paper, it doesn't seem to be as serious, right? But so when we're talking about like, oh, it's just you're flaky, or oh, it's just this, or like, oh, so you're a little hyper. What people don't understand is once you start to look at how those changes impact your life, and as you grow older, like that looks like divorce, that looks like getting fired from jobs, that looks like excessive spending into credit card debt, that looks like, struggling with addiction. Like it's all of those things. So it is a really huge issue in our society that goes undiagnosed or mistreated or whatnot, because ADHD left in children, left untreated, then into adults starts to form into depression because, it's a comorbid disorder, because then it's, you're taught constantly of like, oh, and be like your peers and blah, 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 and like fit in and blah, blah. And so you're looking at everybody being able to complete tasks or reports or do all these things. And then you're shaming yourself on the inside of like, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I get on that track? Why can't I be on that train? Why did I not
get for kids though, right? I used to see so many kids at the place that we worked at who they were so sad because they were constantly getting in trouble because they couldn't help it. And people were constantly yelling at them. All they knew how to seek was negative attention. And then it leads to them feeling like shit. And it sucks and it's sad.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So like most mental health disorders, it's on a spectrum, right? So we don't have to have a deficit of attention or no, that's the other thing that I was going into. Hold on. Let me put a line in there and separate that. So I'll just fucking run on sentence myself. So it's on a spectrum, right? Just because you may struggle with, focus and attention doesn't automatically equate you have ADHD. And just because your ADHD looks like something doesn't mean it looks like something for somebody else. Like I know that I have ADHD, but I am on time for everything, if not early. I hate not being on time. That is a huge thing though for people with ADHD, is being on time to things, because it's just we have a warped sense of time, right? And then it starts to tap into those executive functioning skills that we really struggle with: time management, organization,
forgetting things,
planning, all of those things. So it really struggles into that. I think the reason that isn't necessarily an issue for me is because from being a young kid, my mom is somebody who my mom's a beautician. So she works with clients on a time basis. So I've seen how that directly impacts somebody. My dad was a bus driver. I've seen how that directly impacts people's lives if he was to be late or not on time. So I think because I had that reinforcement consistently throughout my life, that it made it so like that wasn't an option. Does that make sense? Like there was so much repetitive talk about it. And now even being somebody who is on appointment basis, like I always think about, okay, I don't want to be late for my clients because I don't like when they're late for me. And I know that I'm not late for them. So I expect that same respect in return. And the same goes with my other appointments. Like I'm a client-based person. So if I'm going to get a service done, like my nails or, eyebrows or things like that, I'm not going to be fucking late because that's their time and energy. So I think that if there is enough coaching being put into some of these areas that have deficits, you absolutely can learn to cope with the struggles that you face or that you have. So basically that's in this training that I did. Basically, that's what it turned out to be. It wasn't like there is these, I think a lot of like depression, anxiety, some of those, mental health disorders, we talk a lot about mindset, right? And a lot about like really challenging your thoughts and showing up for yourself. That's really not what ADHD is. It's realistically like coaching. It's like structure, it's rigidity, it's routine, and it's getting that routine down and solidified. So then you can start to see, what is forthcoming from those repetitious actions. Does that make sense? Like if they say for like somebody who's being treated for ADHD, you should have more of a coaching style approach, like maybe meeting 3 times a week for like 10 to 15 increments and then send that person on their way, or like having, a 5-minute check-in daily, because that's what it's needed. That sustained attention and energy in a 60-minute session isn't enough.
I also think setting small weekly goals between sessions is super important. That's what I do with my clients.
Yes, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Attainable goals.
Yes, that's the keyword, small.
Yes.
Small goals that build onto the next thing. So there are parts of DBT that absolutely work with it, right? Like building those small goals. But when we talked about, we haven't done a recording on Atomic Habits, have we?
No, we did a masterclass on it.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah. So doing like, the most random thoughts pop into my head. The most random.
Habit stacking, I'm assuming, is what you were going to say.
No, I was thinking about Oreos that I ate Oreo cookies yesterday. Why it came into my mind. Oh, and it's like, if I don't say it out loud, then it's so distracting. It's so distracting. Anyways, so Atomic Habits, where was I fucking going with that?
I thought you were going to do habit stacking because you start with small and then you build on them.
Yes. But I was going to say something else too, and it's fucking gone. I think it's more so about what I was going to talk about is that it's those small actionable changes, that's, I think because we were talking about the setting the small goals and the small intentions. And so when he's talking in Atomic Habits about trying to build that habit, like, sure, yes, okay, you want to work out daily, but that doesn't mean we go balls to the wall and just, okay, I'm going to fucking work out daily. And that's what it's going to be. It's like, okay, how can I show up for myself 3 times this week? Okay, next week, how can I show up for myself 4 times? Okay, then in the next week, how can I show up for myself 5 times? Or realistically, maybe it has to go slower. Maybe it's like, I need to get 3 weeks solid in a row where I'm showing up for myself 3 days in a row, and then building it to another 3 weeks for 4 days in a row. And then, so those small actionable steps lead to these big changes, because what we say all the fucking time is consistency is key. Consistency will beat out effort every single time. So the biggest thing that people focus with or struggle with when they have ADHD is either the executive functions part, like the time management, the planning, organization, things like that, or the sustained attention, right? So the medication is what's going to help for the sustained attention. That's what stimulants are meant for. So stimulants help boost the neurotransmitters, which is why they're so effective. But it's not, medication alone isn't going to just be the end all be all and then you're better, right? And that's like with any mental health disorder. You have to learn what works for you, which is why I like the coaching approach, because it's putting the I think all therapy puts the responsibility back in your hands, but to me, it's more so like instead of this like long drawn out explanation of, hour long sessions of what are you really struggling with? It's like, it's getting you to focus on what works for you. Like, so one thing that we were talking about beforehand was that stuff you talk with your clients about setting timers. And I do the same exact thing. And I forget there's an app that you can do that with.
There's a bunch of apps that are helpful for ADHD.
Yes. And I feel like one is, it's like right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think about it. But like, that's what I tell my clients too. And I tie it into a mindfulness activity after I talk to them about the 3 states of mind. And we talk, okay, well, how do we cultivate mindfulness? Well, we have to do mindfulness exercises. And so DBT loves visualization and they love meditation, which doesn't work for a lot of people. I can't just sit down and meditate like that shit. I'm so bored. I'm so fucking bored. So I don't. So I do the things like the timing of like, okay, I'm sitting here saying that I don't want to wash these dishes, but okay, just put on a timer and let's see. So then I time myself and I'm like, okay, you had a pretty big amount of dishes and it only took you 4 minutes. And so now I can take that little piece of advice or, the little piece of information. And the next time that I'm like, oh, I really don't want to wash these dishes, I can challenge myself of like, Maria, it took 4 minutes last time. You have 4 minutes. Do it now. The same goes with like when I need to get gas. Of like, oh, it's going to take forever. I don't want to get gas. Like it's going to take 20 minutes to fill up, which is just a fucking bold-faced lie. We all know that. It doesn't take, 20 minutes to fill up. You know what it is going to do though? If you don't go get gas in that moment that you have to get gas, you're going to have to get gas in the morning. And guess what? You're never running on time then. Yep. You're never running on time in that instance. It's, oh, I got to do this. And I woke up late and I've got this. And so then you fuck yourself over because you're not taking the time in that moment when you have the actual time available, because you're making this lie up in your head of it's going to be too hard or it's too much or it's this or it's that.
I also encourage clients to put reminders all over their house, their workspace. Yes. Set reminders on your phone. Like there's no shame in that. I have a fantastic memory. I have a ridiculous memory. Do I still have to set reminders for things? Yes. Because I'm anxious and I'm worried I will forget something even though I know that I will not.
Yes. I literally set like my appointment books. Like I have like little check boxes of the things that I need to get done. And sometimes it's just the most basic shit of like, put files away.
Yep.
I can see that they need to be put away. Like it's on my desk. Like I can see that, like put them away, but like, then I check it off because then it's helping with that dopamine, because that dopamine gets released when you feel like you're being productive. And so then the more I can hijack that fucking chemical, I'm going to in my brain, one of the happiness chemicals. So the other aspect, so the timing, right? So getting yourself to time yourself. And then it's also the setting reminders anywhere, like put it. So if you can't, like if you're writing down Post-it notes and you leave Post-it notes, what the fuck is the point of that? Put a reminder in your phone. You carry a little calculator or a little computer around with you all the fucking time. Just put a reminder on that shit. I cannot tell you how many times, like I just put reminders on my phone of shit that I'm like, I know I'll forget this. I know that I will. There's no, like, I get up at, now that Jeff isn't working because his truck is still broke, I used to get up around like 4:15. Now I get up around like 5-ish. But like I knew that I was getting up the one morning for a purpose to ride with one of the girls in my Peloton group. But I still put that shit as I got up at 5, but at 5:40 I had an alarm go off because we had a 5:45 class. Because I knew that I would get into something and be like, oh shit, like it's time for whatever, like setting up consultations with people. If it's not a session and I'm not sending you a reminder and it's a consultation, if I don't put that on my watch, because your Apple Watch your watch too probably. If you've got like a appointment or something, it'll say like appointments today. Like today it says no more appointments because I don't have anything. But then it reminds me, and then it's that constant in your face that like Atomic Habits, it's that cue. That's the first step of building that habit or paying attention to something, is that visual cue. You've got to make it obvious.
How many times has a client said, well, like, yeah, I set reminders and I just turn them off?
Yeah. I can't tell you
that's a choice.
And that's the part that I struggle with because people, right. I think there are certain things about my personality where you could probably gather that I'm a little uppity sometimes, right? Like I get really jazzed up about something, or I'm like, I speak quickly, or like I get distracted by things. So you can probably put together like, maybe, she has ADHD, but a lot of times people are like, well, it doesn't seem like you suffer with those things. That's because I've literally grown up in my body for 34, almost 35 years. It has taken the past 7 to 8 years to really hone in on what the fuck do you need to do to get yourself where you need to be?
Mm-hmm.
And to then, I feel like I have Zeus's hair in my nose. I swear to God, guys, I'm not doing cocaine, but I feel like I fucking.
She's not Amber Hearding it on the fucking.
So I'm not Amber Hearding it on the podcast. God. But I feel like I have fucking his hair all over me, and it's like, it's so distracting. Anyways. Okay. It's so bad. Amber
People think
Heard,
you don't
man,
struggle. It's taken you
that's
7
a whole fucking thing.
years.
Sorry. But yeah, 7 years to even longer, right? Because I think that you figure out ways in school to like, I was never a good study, somebody who goes and studies. So, but there is a thing called mirroring that does work a lot with people who have, you know, attention issues. You don't have to have ADHD, but if you have attention issues, is that since we are such like, you know, herd people and like community people, we want to be like the people that we're surrounding ourselves with and be like that. So people do this thing, they were doing it on TikTok, they do it on YouTube. It's not a new thing. It's just more accessible, right? Because of social media, where there's this thing called mirroring. So these people would have like a whiteboard, whatever next to them, and they'll write with their dry erase marker of like, this is what we're doing, you know, time for the break, studying, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they're just working and doing what they need to do. And they've got a camera pointed at them. So it's just that you're following along with them. So like, they're not talking, they're just doing their work. So then you mimic that. And then it tells you when they're going to take a break. So then when they take a break, it's like a 10-minute thing. They'll talk or maybe interact with people and then go right back into it, which is really cool. But I found that if like, I can't prompt myself to study by myself, but if I'm doing something with somebody, it's way easier for me to do it. Right. Especially when it's repetitive. Like when we got together to try to do that training, it didn't really work out well because we hadn't seen each other and we were more amped to like be with each other and hang out with each other. But also then it was
was not stimulating. It was not stimulating at all. And the lady was kind of an asshole. And it was just, we made it work though.
But I can tell you though, that I'm so thankful though, that I still came over and we did it together, because taking the test at the end and being able to like, you know, bounce answers off of each other, that was so helpful for me, because that is an area where my ADHD shows up hardcore when I have to do tests. I can't focus to save my goddamn life. I got to read the test. Like, I don't even know how I made it through my national counselor's exam. I literally don't, because I got a shit ton of ethics questions, which was not like a big thing. And statistics questions, I got both of those, and I'm terrible with math. And also like, you can't have anything. You can't have like water. You can't have like a hair tie to distract. Like nothing. You can't have anything. I remember I had my hair up and I took my hair tie out so I could fidget with it because I was so fucking distracted. It was so bad.
And my anxiety is so bad that I would get test anxiety and sit down and take a test and convince myself that I forgot fucking everything I studied.
Yep. And I will say that I'm not mad at my parents for not advocating for like an IEP or a 504, right? So which would be something like an IEP is an individualized education plan, and a 504 is a behavioral plan for school, right? They help people who have mental health diagnoses to be able to get accommodations that they might need. My biology teacher, Mrs. Warner, shout out, she's literally the fucking best. She would allow me, because she had a lab, because she was a biology teacher, chemistry, zoology, and like anatomy. So she had a lab attached to her classroom, and she would let everybody spread out, because her classroom was like super long tables where it's like, I mean, you were so close to people.
Yeah.
So she would always let me, and maybe other people, I don't really pay attention, but I know it wasn't a lot, would let me go to the lab and sit at my own table. And so then that way I got to spread all my things out and like spread my papers out. Like I would always take my tests apart, just because if I felt like I could see everything, it would be easier for me to do it versus the back and forth and flipping. And then being in that room, it was easier for me to focus because there was less distraction. Somebody like clearing their throat and ruffling papers and, you know, coloring. Like I would be so fucking, it'd be like 20 minutes in and I think I'd have like 3 questions done, because I'd just be like zoned in on everyone else. So that is also something that's accessible to people who are still in school. I'm never, everybody who I know in college who had those though had them from high school and they just followed them to college. So I don't know if you can go get one.
Yeah. So I have a college student who was hoping to get like an accommodations plan, is what they call it. So if you have a diagnosis and things are going on, This particular girl does not have ADHD. She struggles with other things, but accommodations in terms of like deadlines or understanding that if I don't show up to class for 3 days, I could be in a depressive episode, right? Like those kinds of things. I think because mental health is now so out in the open, because even when I was in college, it was a like, you fucking get your shit done no matter what, doesn't matter what you're going through, right? Like you don't get accommodations. I think it's a really great thing. And are they easy to attain in school? Not necessarily, but that's when you use your assertiveness training skills and fucking assert for your needs or your child's needs or whomever's needs.
Yeah. And I think most professors are pretty accommodating, except like, I think so in the beginning of some of our classes from college, I remember them saying like, we have a couple people who have accommodations who get somebody who's taking notes, like will copy your notes and then give them to the person. The person was never like singled out or whatever. Like you didn't know who it was, but like whoever was like good at taking notes, they would take their notes, copy them, and then give it to the student who was a bad note taker. I think that you would have to have something like an IEP for that, but in the sense of like asking I would ask my professors to like move around in the lecture halls sometimes. Sometimes they were classrooms, but sometimes they were like big lecture halls. Like I would ask to move around or ask to have some extra time, or can I come take this on a different day? And most were relatively accommodating, honestly. So getting back to how do you function with this, right? I really think there has to be some level of insight, right? Of like, what are you struggling with? What are you struggling with? Get that, take that to the therapist or the coach, whoever that you figure out, and say, okay, here are the things that I want to do. Here are the things that I need to accomplish or that I'm struggling with. How do I do that? And then that's where it's kind of like motivational interviewing with your therapist or your coach for them to help kind of set these smaller things, right? Because what's important to somebody isn't always going to be, the way that the client wants to handle it. But I think sometimes it gets so hard for them to even think about like, this is such a big goal for me and I don't even know what step one would be. So I think that's the benefit of going to a therapist or a coach. I honestly, after having gone through that training and recognizing of like what I did with myself to be able to function in, the world that I'm in, I think that the 10 to 15 minute segments of maybe like 3 times a week or 4 times a week would be way better, way more effective, because realistically, I think what it is battling that resistance that you feel, right? Of those. So, you could call them cognitive distortions. This book that Jeff gave me that really helped me make the move of leaving the hospital system we were at, I think it's The War on Art. And it's a very easy read, but it talks about like meeting that resistance, battling that resistance. And that is where I think a lot of my changes came with ADHD and not getting things done. Like at the hospital, I was taking all of my family session notes home. I was leaving some of my individual sessions open. Like I would come home, like I just couldn't focus there because it didn't feel like it didn't feel like purposeful work. I felt really burnt out and drained. And so I would just take my work home with me, but then it was creating more work because I was so distracted at work. I couldn't do anything. So reading that book talks about meeting this resistance, battling this resistance of like, well, I don't want to do dishes. I'm tired. I'll do them later. Battle the resistance with, okay, time it, see how long it takes. Okay. Now you have that piece of information that you can apply to the other times of like, okay, get gas now, or like it's showing up with intention, right? Of like recognizing and being mindful in that moment of this moment, it's easier to accomplish XYZ versus pushing it off.
Yep.
So I think that would be more helpful when it's like, okay, well, I've got 3 baskets of laundry that I need to fold and I really need to get them done. Okay, so let's set a timer of, every night for 15 minutes, you're doing laundry. Doesn't matter how much you get accomplished. It's just that we're building that consistent act of that you're doing it 15 minutes every night. That's the other thing. When I have people who are like, well, I don't want to clean my house, I don't want to whatever, set a timer for 15 minutes. Whatever you get done in 15 minutes is what you get done. Yep. Jeff and I do that. We moved away from it because his truck is broken and he's been off 3 months because of this computer chip shortage thing. So we don't set the timer anymore because he literally cleans every day because he's so bored. But like in the winter, we were setting an hour every Sunday where we would clean, and just whatever we could get done is what we could get done. And we didn't shame ourselves if everything wasn't done. It was just, okay, this was an intentional hour that we're going to clean. And typically once you get started, it's way easier to then, okay, I'll just tack on another 15 minutes. Does that make sense? So, what?
There's this person that lives in the building across from me that thinks it's
Uh-huh.
1996 and they just want to bump their music, and
Okay.
it's so annoying to me. Don't
Okay.
get me wrong, I love loud music, but like when your
Same.
speakers are blown out and your whole car is shaking and that's what it sounds like, I'm embarrassed for you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's so oh my god, I'm so annoyed. See, I don't have ADHD, but I'm distracted now by this fucking
Yeah.
stupid ass car.
Well, realistically, I feel like that's it. That's the whole episode. It's like you need to figure out what areas you're struggling with, what executive functions you're struggling with. Is it the planning? Is it the organization? Is it time management? Like what is it? What needs to tackle? Like, and just write down where that shows up in your life of like, I'm late to work every day, or I can't get this done, or I can't get this accomplished, or I really struggle with this. Okay, let's write those things down and then bring that to the therapist or the coach. And then that's when you start making the action plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Again,
just
though, nothing's going to change if you're not taking action.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. If you're just complaining about how hard it is to do things, then you will forever keep framing that in your mind that it's hard to do those things, right? Like, is testing hard for me? Yes, absolutely. But do I need to do it? Does that still need to happen in areas of my life? Yes, absolutely. So it makes no sense to me, like, oh, it's so hard. Budgeting. Man, fucking budgeting was a big one for me. That was my coping skill, right? I didn't fall into addiction. I fell into, I guess addiction and like spending money.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the thing for me of like, oh, I just don't want to budget. Like that's too hard for me. I can't do that. My brain doesn't work with math, blah, 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 blah. You have to figure out how it works for you. Like the way that I do my budget now, I'm almost like obsessive about it. Like I check my bank every single day, not usually on the weekends, but every single day, move money around where it needs to be. And because it feels like I'm focusing on what I can control instead of focusing on out of all of the things that maybe due or all of the things that I got to pay, I'm focusing on what I can control. And that's, managing the money that is in that account and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this has helped explain maybe some of the thought process behind ADHD, what it is, what it seems like, what it could show up as, and understand that like the guidelines that we go by and the symptomology, the symptoms that show up aren't going to be the same for everybody. So again, this is not us diagnosing anybody. Please, we love hearing from you guys. We do. What we can't do is give out assessments in our DMs.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot do that. We love and want to support each and every one of you. And we will always say that the best way for us to love and support you guys is if you feel that you are really struggling with something, please, please, please reach out and find a therapist. We have an episode on how to find a therapist. Mm-hmm. It's short and concise, straight to the point. So please check that out. Some of the resources that I came across when doing this is the woman who did the TED Talk has a YouTube channel called How to ADHD. Mm-hmm. There is a podcast that I follow, and I've got to pull it up because it's relatively new to me because of I just found it from that girl. Where is it? Oh, I just saw it. Where'd it go? Nope. ADHD Rewired. Mm-hmm. Eric Tivers. So that is also a podcast that you can listen to. The mirroring that I was talking about, you can type in mirroring on YouTube, search it, it'll pop up. Setting
There's also
time.
a fuck ton of apps for like scheduling and getting tasks done and being able to check things off. I am like an old school traditional pen and paper kind of girl. So
same.
And
I also feel like that's creating that mind to mental connection of being able to write it down. I'm just searching because I know the one is going to pop up. Flora is one. It's that one. That's the one that I was thinking about, Flora. But they have a bunch of different apps. Like I put in like trackers. Trackers are a huge way to be able to continue with the progress that you're making too, of like checking off the boxes, right? But then also being able to review after a month's time or however many, like maybe you set it for a week or whatever, to be able to review, okay, what am I accomplishing? What am I not accomplishing?
Sure.
It really then helps you hone in and focus on those goals that you have and like, how am I moving towards them? So we love you guys. You can find us at Rewriting Her Story Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. You can find Steph at The Spooky Therapist. You can find me at BEA_XO11, both on Instagram. questions, concerns, comments, please email us. We would love to cover any topics that you would like. We'd love to hear feedback. So let us know if there's anything that we can do for you in the sense of getting a topic out there or something that you want addressed. We love you, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye.